Well, hello everybody. Welcome back. Welcome back, Pastor R.
It's good to be home.
Absolutely, absolutely. So maybe we'll mention a little bit about the fact that you were over in a different country in a little bit, and today we're going to hit some really tough topics and really current event type issues. So we're going to start with the word, and let's do that first.
Okay. So as I was thinking about our topic of respect, I thought about Psalm 112, which begins, "Praise the Lord, and blessed is the man who fears the Lord, who finds great delight in his commands." You know, I think a topic we don't hear much about these days, Dr. Amir, is the fear of the Lord.
Mm.
And the fear of the Lord is really to look up to him with respect, or look out for his judgment. So we get one of two things to happen. Either we look up to God with deep respect for who he is and honor him,
Right.
or else we watch out, because God is an awesome God, and he renders judgment to those who turn away from him.
Right.
So there's a blessing upon the person who fears the Lord, puts God first, honors him, and finds great delight in his commands, which may ask the question, what are his commands?
Right.
Now, one of the primary commands in the Old Testament is to love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind, soul, and strength,
Yes.
and to teach these things to your children diligently. When you wake up in the morning, when you lie down at night, when you walk along the road, when you sit around the house. So to make the commands of God part of the conversation,
Yes.
that we're passing on our faith to our children. So it seems the primary responsibility of impartation of faith is from parents to their children, to love God and teach our children to love God and know what his commands are. And then it gives a promise, Dr. It says, his children, the man who fears the Lord, who finds delight in his commands, his children will be mighty in the land.
Wow.
They're going to be strong.
I like
They're going
that.
to be influential. They're going to be the leaders of their generation. And that's really what we want, is to cultivate children who can rise up and influence our culture for good. They'll be mighty in the land. The generation of the upright will be blessed.
Wow.
The blessing seems to flow from God to the parents, to the children, so that the children of the upright are blessed. Then, moving on, in the 7th verse, it says about this man, he will have no fear of bad news. Now,
That's awesome.
it seems that whenever we turn on the television
Oh my gosh.
or look at the internet, there's bad
Yes.
news. We are just flooded with bad news, that there's these school shootings.
Yeah.
Students, sometimes with mental illnesses, with issues, are coming back into schools and opening fire upon their classmates. We just heard a couple weeks ago of a shooting down in Parkland, Florida, where I think 17 children were killed
Yeah.
by an assailant. And so there's been a lot of talk these days about gun control and banning certain weapons, and teachers carrying and concealing weapons. So there's a lot of talk these days about guns,
Yeah.
and there's a lot of bad news. So what we're trying to do today, I think, is trying to get to the good news
Yes.
in the midst of all the bad news.
Sure.
Because this man who fears the Lord has no fear of bad news. His heart is steadfast, trusting in the Lord. So if we basically obey what God says to us, there's a blessing,
Yes.
not only upon us for following him, but upon our children. It says the children will be mighty in the land, the generation of the upright will be blessed. So it seems we have to get back to what God said about raising kids in order for us to experience a blessing and pass the blessing on to them. The third, fourth generation keeps on going on, the blessing
Yes.
to our children. So let's talk a little bit about raising kids, Dr. Miran. I know you were raised in another country
Yes.
where it was much different than here.
Yes.
So let's just talk a little bit about respect and raising kids.
Absolutely. I mean, first off, just from a physiologic medical standpoint, what an absolute amazing miracle that two people can come together and then a third person is created.
Yes.
Just unbelievably beautiful.
Yeah.
And to say that we start with just a little bit of genetic material from two people.
Yeah.
And they're basically a cell and a cell, right? These two cells come together, form one cell,
Yeah.
right? Then the cell divides and divides and divides. you end up with a ball of cells. Those are stem cells. You've heard stem cells, you know.
Yeah.
And those cells then all of a sudden, miraculously, and anyone who says it's not miraculous, I prove it, because show me how it's done. We can't. We can't really show how a stem cell can form into an arm and another arm and eyes and facial features and organs and glands and blood vessels and everything that shapes into that beautiful child that's born 9 months later.
Yeah.
You go, how is that happening? It's incredible. It's amazing. It's a pure miracle. So right there alone, we need to understand our responsibility as parents, that we are, we need to make sure this life that's now created is productive and contributing to society.
Yes.
And the best way to do that is to honor God.
Yes.
So respect is a big thing. Respect. I mean, in my country where I grew up, you never sit somewhere where your back is to someone else. Just out of respect. And if you run into someone who you know is older than you, you always have to be the person who says hello first. Now these are rituals. These are cultural traditions, and you could say there's no meaning to it, and I agree with you. We put meaning to it. It's the meaning we give it. We give it meaning because we respect someone who's older than us. If someone in country I grew up in, Iran, if someone is older and that's an elder, that's an older person, well, everybody will go sit near that person and ask questions, say, teach us, tell us, what do you know? How can I learn from you? You clearly have lived longer than me. I need you. And there's a reverence for just age. And the older someone is, the more respect they get, the more praise they get, the more comfort they're given. If someone walks into a gathering and you know that person's older than you, you immediately get up and give them your seat. Immediately. I mean, it's automatic. It's understood. They walk onto a bus, you get 4 or 5 people will get up and say, please take mine, please take mine, please take mine. It's that level of respect, and I think that's great because, when I show respect to someone, it helps me. And I think a lot of God's commands, and things that God says we should do, a lot of them are really for our own benefit.
Yes.
But when I respect that elder who just walked in, now I'm going to end up learning from that person.
I think you're putting on display also and modeling to your children, if they're there, that the elderly have value, and someday they'll be taking care of us.
Yeah.
So there is some self-benefit to respecting those older, because someday we'll be the older ones.
That's right. Yeah.
That will need some extra care.
Exactly. And so the issue with these school shootings, part of it I think might be that there's less value for life.
Yes.
If someone can just bring a gun to a crowded area where they're all kids and fire away, I wonder what are these values that are missing, and how do we change that?
Well, there seemed to be a shift in our country, Dr. Amir, when we took prayer out of schools and we took the reading of the Ten Commandments out of our schools, because the commandments do speak to the value of life. This is life as God intended it to be, the best kind of life, where He's being honored and respect for human life. So if we have imbibed ourselves on video games, if we have internalized anger and unhappiness, and then we have in our possession guns, it's just a very volatile situation where an individual can walk into a school and open fire.
Yeah, that's extremely sad. So that person, not only are they missing some values, but there's got to be some psychological disturbances.
Yes.
And so we think about wounds, scars, mind scars. And you go, well, what are young people being exposed to? There was no internet when I was a little kid. But now in our fingertips, we have any information we want.
Yes.
Whether that information is going to mentally scar us or not.
Yes.
And so how early are children being exposed to images, and pictures, and stories, and video clips, and movies that are damaging them because their brains aren't developed enough to understand what it means and process that. I'll tell you again, my background is medical, and I know when you study the human brain, the brain rapidly expands and grows. The head of a child, like at the age of 2, your spine and your skull are like pretty much done growing. I mean, they'll grow a little more, but not a whole lot more. Yeah. After that, it's the arms and legs that grow. If you see a little 2-year-old, they have trouble touching the top of their head because their head is too big and their arms are too small. They're very disproportionate, which makes them cute. So the brain gets really big really fast.
Yeah.
And then when they become teenagers, the inefficiencies of the brain start to repair themselves. So you have all these neurologic pathways, these neurons, these cells in the brain that die and fall off and disappear so that the brain can become more efficient. Because when they're a teenager, a signal comes in, let's say the eye, and it goes to this part of the brain, and that part of the brain says, no, I'm not the place for you, and then it sends a signal to this part, and it goes over here, and it goes back here, and it goes to the front, and eventually finds where it's supposed to go. And then it starts to learn. It goes, that's very inefficient. That's why a lot of times you've noticed teenagers, you ask them a question, they go, huh?
Yeah. Confused.
Yeah. Why don't you use words? Okay. Huh? So, no disrespect for teenagers. I was a teenager. I remember just being very socially awkward. And I think now I know that it's part of that is because the brain is inefficient. Things don't go right. So as it becomes more efficient, it actually gets smaller. It shrinks. So from like the age of 13 to 18, that brain is actually shrinking, and it's creating these pathways that are now permanent, that are going to stay there. And so in those times are when they're playing those bad video games.
Wow.
Those are the times where they're most curious, and they're searching for things they shouldn't be searching for online. Yeah. And they're pursuing things, and they cannot possibly be expected to understand what's good and bad. That's when they need the guidance of their parents, because their brains are like forming. They're going to be permanent at that point. And what do we have children on? We have them on psychotropic drugs, like Ritalin and Adderall and Vyvanse, and we have them on antidepressants. We have 12, 13, 14-year-olds on antidepressants. These are psychotropic drugs. They shouldn't be on these things. We need to have raised them up from day one properly. So that we can make sure. But I'm not saying it's too late. If you have a teenager who's just not doing the right things, it's never too late. First off, we have a God who's capable of anything and everything.
Yes, he's a healer.
100%.
Yes.
And he can transform you instantly. Secondly, the human body is always changing. Always changing. There's neuroplasticity. We've discovered that the brain continues to build and repair even till the last years of our life, so that doesn't end. So there's plenty of hope. But how much they say on the farm, number one rule on the farm is close the gate. Yeah. Right? Because if you let the animals out, now it's a lot harder to round them up and get them back in.
That's for sure.
And so basically, if your kids are little, then closing the gate means you start now. You don't wait till something happens, something needs to be repaired or healed or.
Speaking of gates, Dr. Grimm, the body has its gates, like it has an eye gate.
Yes.
It has an ear gate.
Yes.
It has a mouth gate. So there's ways we receive information.
That's right.
So what do I put my eyes upon, and what do I listen to, and what do I speak? That comes out of my heart. So we have to be very careful about what we allow our eyes to see.
Yes.
One of David's prayers was that nothing impure would see with his eyes.
Yeah.
So I think we need to help our children with the monitoring of what they're laying their eyes upon and listening to, the music they're listening to.
Yeah.
Because it's creating inside of them, an image. It's creating inside of them a message.
Right.
And it may not be a healthy message.
Did you wear a helmet when you rode a bike when you were 6, 7 years old and when you were growing? No. But you won't find a child anywhere right now who rides a bike without a helmet. We're so careful that they don't get physically damaged. But we care very little about what goes in their eyes.
Look at how things have changed. Back then, parents were overprotective for other things.
Yes.
I want to know who your friends are.
Yes.
I want to know who you talk to,
Yes.
and I want to know where you go, and you
Yes.
don't go anywhere unless you go with someone I know, and all
Yes.
of that. But some of that stuff has changed,
Mm.
and especially now that in their bedroom they have access to the internet, where the computer should really be in the living room where everybody can see what you're looking at.
Yes.
And the phones, you leave the phones when you walk in the door, front door, you put your phone by the door and you leave it there, and then there's no point in having your phone. Why are you texting when we should be talking as a family? You need to check your phone, go ahead and check it. You don't need to be that strict, but really, we have to watch some of those things. The helmets that we put on our kids so they don't fall, hardly does anyone get injured anyways. Did we have a lot of brain trauma when kids didn't wear helmets? And
No.
that really wasn't. We had scrapes and scratches. That's it.
Yeah.
But we need to really watch what's going in their eyes.
I like what you're saying very much. Back to Deuteronomy, when it talks about teaching your children when you sit around the house, when they wake up in the morning, when they lie down at night, the family dinner table. What a place, Dr. Amir, for a conversation to happen between a parent and a child, just processing their day, what happened, the highs, the lows, the good things that happen, the bad things that happen. We just want to be connected to each other. And I think that's something that's gone out of style in the American life.
Yes.
Is connecting with each other.
Yes.
Over a meal, setting the table, helping mom with the dinner.
Yes.
Putting the dinner on the table, eating together, enjoying each other, sharing our stories, and then cleaning up together. I think the American family has a lot of room to grow in terms of that lifestyle of connecting with each other.
Yeah, and we're not saying go backwards to old times, but we're saying we need to repair certain things in our culture and society. Social interaction medically is healing in every sense of the word. When someone gets sick, traditionally, someone gets sick, you go, well, we have to go visit someone who's sick. Do you know where that comes from? Because when you visit someone, you increase healing in their body. Did you know that?
Mm-hmm.
Literally, that interaction. You visited me in the hospital once.
Yes.
That interaction is healing. It's been proven. There's a book called Love, Medicine, Miracles. It's by Bernie Siegel. Bernie Siegel was a pediatric oncologist, so he was operating on cancerous tumors in little kids. And he had the highest success rate of anybody. It's the highest that your kids are living. They're overcoming terminal cancer. And he said it's love. It's love, and it's the interaction between them and the nurses. And he said, I discovered that when a child is sick, if they have their classmates come visit them, they get better faster. Their teacher comes, visits them, they get better faster. Their friends surround them, they get better faster. Their parents stay in the room with them, they get better faster.
I always like to go into rooms, Dr. Amir, like hospital rooms. I see a classmates have sent in little balloons and,
Yes.
and teddy bears and posters with pictures, and I'm thinking there's love in that room.
Yes.
And it's a healing factor.
It 100% is.
Yeah.
It's proven, scientifically proven, we heal. In fact, Dr. Dean Ornish has shown that you can reverse heart disease. You can reduce plaques in your heart and your arteries by having 30 minutes of social interaction, positive social interaction daily. You reduce it. And he showed it. His book is phenomenal. This is a guy who reversed and cured, without drugs or surgery, prostate cancer in hundreds of people and reversed heart disease in thousands of people by saying, hey, go for a walk every day, eat more vegetables, and have social interaction. That's it. How simple is that? You know what? Why should we wait till we have heart disease to do those things?
It sounds very doable.
Those are good things.
Yes. Well, when Moses wrote about walking along the way, maybe a modern equivalent of that is driving in the car.
Yeah.
I wonder if any of you have opportunities to drive your kids places like soccer tournaments, and some of our tournaments are hundreds of miles away.
Brilliant.
What an opportunity to connect with our kids and just kind of listen for a while and wait until they're ready to talk. But somewhere in the journey, they're going to open up a bit, begin talking about their life.
Yeah.
If we're attuned to them, taking advantage of those journeys together, and seeing that, trying to get inside their heart a little bit and see what's going on.
Right.
We impart some wisdom to them.
Now they saw Jimmy. If you watch that video, great. You'll remember Jimmy because he's very memorable. We were talking about forgiveness at the time, I think.
Yes.
And so you know Jimmy, and Jimmy's one of Pastor R's sons. If you haven't watched it, go back and watch that video because it was a great talk with the three of us around the table here. But what I'm going to ask is, and hopefully this is okay that I ask you, is I want you to gloat and brag just a little bit about how wonderful your relationship is. Just because maybe our audience has some young children,
Yeah.
and they don't know what it's going to look like in the future, and just kind of tell them what's possible. Just if you could, that'd be great. And
Well, I think every year, Dr. Muir, I've enjoyed my children a little bit more. And Jimmy now is 27, and he's in the Army. He's a captain, and he's in a Special Forces training. Actually, I flew over him last night in
Oh, wow.
Carolina. I was praying for him. But he's in a very rigorous training now, and he has a desire to be a Green Beret. So he's in what's called a Q school.
wow.
And he had a 3-day break, so he came up to be with me. But if he has 3 days off, he'd like to be with his dad.
How incredible! How awesome is that?
So we have what we call it tea fellowship. We'll stay up late at night drinking tea together, we'll have meals together, and we create music, we write music together, and he performs. So Jimmy's a very creative artist as well as a soldier. So I think being with his dad kind of spawns a little of that creativity.
Sure.
And lets him feel connected. He's also gone through this year a divorce, so his wife didn't want to be married, and so we've processed that a lot of the feelings of,
Yeah. And who better to process that with than
Yeah.
with his dad?
So it's been a joy for me to walk with Jimmy through his life, and if I had a couple days off, I'd go see him as well.
That's great.
He's very dear to me.
That's great. I wish that for my sons, that they would want to come see me if they get just 3 days off. I mean, when you're in the military, and I don't have personal experience, but this is an assumption I'm making is you don't have a whole lot of free time.
No.
And you don't, your nights aren't your own, and your evenings aren't your own, and your early mornings aren't your own. It's not a 9 to 5 job; it's a 24/7 job.
Yeah.
And so when you get 3 days off, that's a big deal. Right? It's a big deal if I get 3 days off, but 3 days off is a huge deal, and he could do anything with those 3 days, and this is what he wants to
And
do.
8 hours of that was driving.
Oh, wow! Look at that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's fantastic.
Yeah, I had a dream of my daughter, Betsy, who now is 30, that when she was 16 years old, we would walk hand in hand through a mall together. And when she was 16 years old, she said, "Dad, would you take me to the mall?" We actually held hands walking through the mall together. And I thought,
That's great.
how weird is this in America for a father to be holding his
Yeah.
daughter's hand? But because she wanted to hold my hand, and so we walked together through the mall.
That's almost a prophetic dream. It's fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you know what though? So let's think about this. What if we all had those images of our children?
Mm.
That instead of saying, I hope you don't end up here, and I hope you don't do this, and I hope you don't do that, and focusing on those negative things we're seeing on the news, which we shouldn't be watching a whole lot of anyways, but what if we had images of that?
Yes.
That one day, my son will come visit me and just want to spend time with me, and it's going to be a great relationship.
I love what you're saying, Dr. Mayor. I think it has a lot to do with intentionality.
Yes.
Of what you set out to do. What's the objective? And the objective, I think, is that when we become adults, we will be in relationship to each other.
Yeah.
Like we will walk with each other through life. So that was my desire, is that the relationship would continue to be strengthened and strengthened. My oldest son Chris is a physician. I mean, we just talked this morning on the phone. He knew I was in Haiti, and he was calling me to see how it went. And he had prescribed some ciprofloxacin, which I'd taken.
Yes.
So because the food there.
Sure.
So he was pleased about that. Anyway, so he was checking on his dad.
Good. That's great.
Yeah. What I think would hope for all those watching would be to see where your kids are and what's next for them. Like one of the things I would speak to my kids about would be when they were 12 years old, I said, you're going to be in places where kids are going to want to experiment with drugs and alcohol, and there may be pornography there. And I am never more than 5 minutes away. So if you need to call me and use me as an excuse, I'd be glad to come and get you. So my oldest son Chris was at a party in Middletown, some 12-year-olds, and they broke out some pornography. And he called me. He said, "Dad, you need to come." And I was there in 5 minutes. And he said, "Dad, I knew I couldn't stay." So we had talked about those situations. And I say to them now, anywhere you are in the world, 24 hours, I can get there. Or if you're around town, I can get there in 5 minutes. So I just want them to know that they've got a dad who's willing to come for them. And one time Chris was in a place called Kathmandu, Nepal, and his flight was canceled. And I spent several hours on the phone getting him a seat on the airplane. His wife called me and said he's stuck. And I called the airline and I was trying to negotiate with them and finally got him a seat. So I'm glad that they still feel that they can turn to their dad when they need him.
Yeah, so that's fantastic, and I want to add from the medical side of it is, just like what goes in their eyes and ears will affect them, what goes in their mouth affects their brain.
Yeah.
And so there's so much sugar out there right now. So many kids are on the drug of sugar, and they're addicted to it. And the Humane Society, a few years ago, I read it was in Kentucky, the Humane Society took these dogs from a family because they were feeding the dogs potato chips and soda.
No way.
But they left the kids. Just took the dogs. And I can only imagine what the kids were eating. And so part of parenting is making sure we keep the environment clean in every way.
Yeah.
Physically,
Yeah.
mentally, and chemically is what they eat. Get rid of the sugar. Really get rid of it. Soda, artificial sweeteners, packaged foods. Get rid of all that. We don't need that. And Easter's coming up, so this is a perfect time to say this. No sugar.
Just as a side note, when I was in Haiti, they drink a lot of coffee down there, and they add about 4 sugars to each coffee.
Oh, wow.
And it's amazing because they grow sugar there.
Okay.
But they all drink this enormous amount of sugar. And I wonder about diabetes and other things because they take several cups of coffee and several loads of sugar in there.
Yeah.
Just got to be harming themselves.
Not good.
No.
And that's refined sugar. It's not raw sugar, so it's
No.
even worse.
Yes.
All right. Well, then hopefully you enjoyed that conversation. We definitely enjoyed it, and we'll be back to talk to you next time.
All right. Bye.